So, 9/11. 9/11 was my second week of teaching ever. I literally had just arrived in Chicago, Illinois. I was a brand new teacher. I was in a Chicago public school that was pretty big, about 1,500 students, so I guess probably about the size of South. And we had 80 different nationalities in that school. It was like the United Nations. And that included about 10% Muslim within the student body. So we had kids that were from Pakistan and Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria. Pretty much you name the countries that were involved in the war on terror, and I had them in my classroom. So the morning of 9/11, I'm running up the stairs. A colleague of mine is running down the stairs. He turns around, he looks at me, he says, "Hey man, did you hear?" And I'm like, "No." He's like, "Plane just hit the World Trade Center." And it hit me quick, and I'm like, okay, wow, that's crazy. And I just kept running up the stairs, and I stopped in front of my classroom door. The bell was going to ring in about 20 seconds, and I just took a minute to compose myself. I stepped inside the room, and 30 very anxious teenage eyes were like, "Mister, did you hear?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I heard." And you can imagine, this is 20 years ago. This is before the internet was, in people's pockets. We didn't have many televisions in the school. So it was word of mouth, right? And what happens when, things get passed down the hallway is, "Oh, a plane hit the World Trade Center. Oh, a UFO hit New York," right? It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Nobody knew exactly what was going on. And I just remember saying, what we do know is an airplane hit the World Trade Center. That's all we know. And I'm going to leave it at that. And I do remember giving the students an assignment. And what surprised me is how quickly almost all of them got to work writing. And I think maybe when you're nervous and you're not sure what's going on, doing schoolwork is maybe calming, it's normal. So I was kind of struck by how the kids just kind of sat down and started to get to work. Except for one, and she was from Pakistan. And I saw her looking out the window. It was a beautiful day. It was, blue sky, sunshine. And I remember her looking out the window, and I think she knew that this was probably going to affect her in some way. I think a lot of people suspected it was a terrorist act, and that it probably came from the Middle East, Muslim extremists. And I think that young lady knew that, hard times were coming. And she was right. The next day, most of our Muslim students did not come to school. In fact, we didn't see a lot of our Muslim kids for about 2 weeks. Their parents were very worried about them, and for good reason. I remember a mother was in a supermarket parking lot, and other customers started throwing fruit at her in the parking lot because they thought she was Muslim. In fact, she was Hindu. She was Indian. But it's kind of hard to tell a Hindu Indian and a Muslim Pakistani apart. They dress very similar to each other. So even Hindus were getting picked on in Chicago's public spaces. Things kind of started to get heated within the school. We had kids from all over the world, and we also had Americans. And some of them were not very nice. They were angry, and understandably. 3,000 people almost died in the World Trade Center attack. And a lot of kids were confused, angry. They wanted revenge. And those are all understandable feelings for sure. They just didn't know where to direct that energy. And for a while, it looked like we might have some gang warfare in the school, right? Like, the kids that weren't Muslim might gang up on the kids that were. And we had an assembly, like imagine 1,500 students packed into an auditorium. And the principal was on the stage, and Miss Hernandez was this short Panamanian Irish dictator of a principal, the opposite of the kind of administrator you'd often find in Waukesha. She was tough, but fair. And she was at the microphone, and a young Muslim student from Afghanistan, well, not that young, he was 17 years old, jumped up on the stage and walked up to Miss Hernandez and said, "Excuse me, Miss Hernandez, I need the microphone." And he just kind of gently took it from her, and she was kind of shocked. This was not scripted, but she kind of stepped back and he looked at the audience and he said, "Yo, what's up? My name is Amir, and I'm from Afghanistan, and I'm here because I am an American. My mom, my dad, they came here because they believed in the American dream. And I'm here because I believe in the American dream. And I know you all have been picking on my Muslim brothers and sisters. I see it in the hallway. And it's got to stop. Because you know what? They're American. They're here because they believe in America." And the more he said that, the more the crowd started to cheer. And before you know it, they were standing up, they were clapping. And he basically neutralized all of that angry energy that probably could have ended up hurting a lot of students. And he turned it into a pro-America rally that included the Muslim kids that were in the school. And I think that kid single-handedly disarmed violence that could have happened. I think we're on the cusp of that. Over that next year, some of our Muslim students left the United States. We lost our salutatorian. That's the second smartest, student in the senior class. Second highest GPA. It was a Saturday night. We were coming home from dinner, and a few teachers and I saw her and her family packing up their car. And we said, "Hey, what are you doing? It's Saturday, it's 10 o'clock, what's going on?" And she said, "The United States government called my father and said that he is to report to their office on Monday morning. So we are driving to Canada tonight." So they literally packed up their car and they left. And the second highest achieving girl in our school was gone. Now, to be clear, were there terrorists in Chicago? Yes, there were. Might they have been close to the school? Might they have known children in the school? Yeah, probably. So, I don't want to paint this as white and black. There's a lot of gray in this situation. I will leave you with the story of one other student. And I was eating lunch, and he came in. He said, "Hey, Dr. Fresh," or actually back then I was Mr. Fresh. "Mr. Fresh, can I come in and have lunch?" And I said, "Yeah, come on in, man." And he's like, "So I think I'm going to join the Army." And I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, I was on the bus the other day, and a guy tried to sell me a DVD. He had a backpack full of DVDs. He's like, 'Hey, man, you're from Afghanistan, right?' And he's like, 'Yeah.' He's like, 'Hey, man, you want to buy a DVD of beheadings?' And these were DVDs of the Taliban beheading people in Afghanistan. And he looked at the guy and he said, 'No, man, I'm not into that, thanks.' And he's like, Mr. Fresh, I want to fight back against that kind of thing, and I'm going to join the Army. There's a special base where they train American soldiers how to assimilate in Afghanistan. They literally have like a pretend village and a pretend city, and these soldiers interact with real Afghanis that teach them the Afghani traditions and culture and language, so that when they actually leave the United States and go to Afghanistan, they're ready to immerse themselves in it. So I'm going to join the Army, and I'm going to go to this Army camp, and I'm going to teach these soldiers, about my culture, so that they can go over there and hopefully make things better. Because he didn't believe in a society where you cut people's heads off because they disagree with you, or you harbor terrorists that would blow up the World Trade Center. So I look back on 9/11, and I think about those kids in Chicago, and just the complexity of it all, and that's when I started teaching. And the crazy thing is, that was 20 years ago, which makes me feel kind of old at this point. But yeah, so anyway, that's my story. I hope you enjoyed listening, and have a good one, you guys.